people still always ask, are we in a housing bubble? Everyone still thinks that the wheels are going to fall off at some point. Talk about rates.
No one wants to hear about rates. Who wants to hear about rates? If inflation starts coming down, which it has came down, if it continues to come down and meets the expectations of the Fed, rates will follow.
Inflation's not bad. It's just we're trying to keep inflation in check. The purchase price doesn't really matter. What matters is what do you qualify for and what can you afford to pay month over month.
Every 0.5% that rates go down, 3 million more home buyers are entering the market.
3 million. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Living Local podcast. I'm Jenna Halvorson, local real estate agent in the Kansas City Metro and focus on Johnson County. And today, I'm joined by the lovely Tanner Garver with Fairway Mortgage. Tanner, thank you for being here.
How are you?
I'm great.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
I'm so excited for this.
Good.
So
great.
fun.
So fun to have Tanner. Tanner, he's very humble, so he's not going to brag on himself. So I'm going to brag on him for a minute because Tanner is a top producer at Fairway Mortgage. He helped, get this, 215 families last year buy a home.
Yeah, we had a good team. Our team did really well last year.
That's incredible, though. But think of that, 215 families that you helped get into a home. I mean, that's a pretty incredible feeling. I have to imagine that. Yeah. It was a busy year.
Yeah, it was a busy year, that's for sure. But you're right. It's fun to be able to help people.
Yeah.
And that's our job. It's more than just a transaction. It's buying a home. And that's a lot of people don't understand that. And it's so fun to get help so many people and get to hear so many stories.
Yeah.
So it's fun.
Okay. So that brings me to my question of, I know every little boy, grows up wanting to be a mortgage lender.
Dreams of being a mortgage lender.
Exactly. Is that your story?
It's
Tell me a little
exactly
bit about why lending.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. So my story is I went to college and said, I'm going to be a mortgage lender.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Said nobody ever.
Yeah, exactly.
So I was a basketball coach. Before all this, I coached basketball at Wichita State University for 3 years prior to mortgages.
What? I did not know that.
It's crazy, right?
You don't seem like you're tall enough to be a basketball coach.
Yeah, no, I never said I was the best player, but I was a good coach.
Okay.
I knew people. I could connect with people.
Okay.
And after I got out, I didn't know what I wanted to do besides that. I had a finance background, and I liked working with people. And long story short, I talked with a bunch of people in the financial services industry, from financial planning to working at a commercial real estate to being in real estate, even all of these different items that I thought I would like. And I met with one person and he told me, if you kind of like people, you want to make a difference and you can be really successful and grow it how you want to grow it in the entrepreneurial mindset, you can be good at this. And I was like, sounds phenomenal. I'm in. That was in 2019. And I didn't know what I was doing. Didn't even know what a mortgage was. And surprise, learned it real quick. Yeah. And it was just a blast being able to grow a team and a business so fast, where our sole focus is helping people achieve. A lot of people, it's a dream to buy a house. Yeah. You don't realize that when you get caught up in the weeds of every day. But once I started, it became so addictive to, one, help people, two, to turn around and be able to grow something that's bigger than ourselves, where we can grow a brand, we can grow a team, we can help people and help the community just grow in general. Yeah. And so I signed up for it, started in 2019. Like I said, now we have a team of 4 or 5 of us on my team, and we lead a branch of 35 individuals. Yeah. And so grew quickly. Yeah. But it was fun. That's the best part of being in the business. Yeah. So.
And we do a lot of business together. I think that's a big part of what we do is, again, kind of always talking about who those partners are in it. So it's fun. So thank you for being here.
Well, talk a little bit
having us. About the spring.
Because what are we talking about today? I want to hear all about this.
I think spring is sprung.
This is awesome, by the way. Yeah. Spring has
sprung. Even though it's been cold and snowing and all the things here in Kansas City, I think we are... we're starting to feel it, aren't we? It's a Monday here in the studio. And so Mondays are always kind of the day. It's like, all right, what were the successes? What did the market look like over the weekend? I was happy. I was able to get a couple under contract. Yeah. Tell me about kind of like how many, so Tanner's working directly with the agents. Yep. How many offers you guys wrote? How many got under contract? Is a little bit of an indicator.
We can kind of have a gauge of the market really easily as a mortgage side, because my whole job is really to partner with real estate agents. And so they're out showing houses, being in the craziness.
Yeah, boots on the ground.
And then we help get the people that they refer to us approved to buy the home, right? So we see it from 20 to 30 different agents every weekend, what it's looking like. Yeah. And so the last month's been absolutely nuts. This weekend, just to put a quick synopsis on everything, is we had 14 people make offers, which is higher than our normal, quite a bit higher. We got 6 accepted, which is a phenomenal weekend. But for the last 3 weekends, over 50% of our offers, we only got 50% of our offers accepted. Yeah. We're under 50% right now. Yeah. And so that means over half the time people are making an offer on a house they think it's their house, it's not going to be accepted, which is crazy. And so that just is a key indicator right now that, hey, we're in the spring market.
Yeah.
Like,
and these are good buyers too. It's not like these are, again, they're all
100%.
pre-qualified,
Yep.
like they're ready to go. They're
Through
good
underwriting,
buyers.
great buyers.
Yeah.
A lot of them are just those first-time home buyers or even the second-time home buyers
Yeah.
that are getting beat out by $50,000-$60,000 over a list price.
Yeah.
Like, it's just insane how quickly it happened,
Yeah.
especially in Johnson County.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Well,
so
and that's kind of
with
what
you focusing on Johnson County, I mean, I'm sure you're seeing the same thing.
Well, yeah. And so that was like, I was just pulling some numbers from the weekend. So we see most of our listings come on Thursday, Friday, Saturday. So looked back in the last 4 days, like I said, it's a Monday. So over the weekend, we had about 400 new homes come in the market in the Heartland MLS, which, that's a pretty wide range. That's the whole metro area, which sounds like a lot. But if we dial into some of those desirable parts of town in Johnson County, for instance, Overland Park, of those new listings, 25 of those homes were for Overland Park. So that's making up 6% of all of the inventory in the metro. And how many people call us on a daily basis being like, I would love to buy a house for $350 in Overland Park.
I was about to say, how many are in Overland Park in Johnson County?
Exactly.
Over 50% of our buyers at least.
Yeah. So it's really like, that's tough. And so what that does is it saturates these areas with buyer demand. And, again, we're starting to see, what are those crazy terms and conditions? The one that I got under contract in Prairie Village this week, it was listed at $499. We're more than 10% over that. And a lot of really like aggressive terms and
with
conditions.
multiple buyers at that price. Like, if we didn't do it, someone was.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And that's like, even that one had someone that was willing to make a higher offer than ours, but we had better terms and conditions and stuff as well. So that's what I want to talk a little bit about in terms of kind of like, what does that look like? Because it's not just the price, but it's all these additional terms. So we are starting to see multiple offers. So we're seeing buyers offer over asking price. We're seeing a lot of buyers saying, hey, we're going to take the house in its present condition. So basically that's saying, seller, you don't really have to do anything at all in the process of getting out. And then this is a big one that I think a lot of buyers maybe don't understand. So I want you to just explain this a little bit. But we're seeing something that we call an appraisal waiver in order to add that to our terms to strengthen our offer. So walk us through what that looks like a little bit.
Yeah. So, and it's crazy. If we were talking 3 months ago, I'd probably tell you you're nuts because it happened so quickly, right?
Yeah.
But that's the spring market in Kansas City, especially when all our buyers are Johnson County.
Yeah.
Which is where everyone wants to be.
Yeah.
And so what you're seeing is what's called in the appraisal waiver. It was very popular in 21, 22, and some of 23. And then it's coming back in the spring.
Yeah.
And what that
we're getting post-COVID 2021, 22 vibes.
The vibes.
That's the vibe. We're here,
spring is sprung. Come on. So what an appraisal waiver is let's say you buy a house for $400,000.
Yep.
Okay. As a lender, we can only lend up to the lesser of the appraised value or purchase price. So let's say you buy it for $400,000, but it's listed for $350,000. Okay. That means there's a $50,000 that you went above list price. Let's say the appraiser comes out, and what an appraiser is someone who comes out and gives you what the value of the home is based on sales prior to your home being sold, to you buying this home. That's a very key point to remember too, is prior, because right now you could run into a couple issues because you're looking at the last 6 months.
Yeah.
The last 6 months was a different market.
It's really different.
Now the appraisers are supposed to adjust to the timing of the market. It's just a matter of
there's some lag there.
There's some lag. And so that right now appraisal waivers are very important. What, as a lender, like I said, we can only lend up to the lesser of the appraised value or purchase price. So you buy it at $400,000. Appraiser comes out, tells us what he believes the value of the home is.
Yeah.
And it was $380,000.
Okay.
That means as a lender, we can only lend up to $380,000. And so you would rather, as the buyer, have to come up with an additional $20,000 or renegotiate with the sellers to drop the purchase price to that $380,000 amount. In cases where there's 5 to 10 offers, when you hear someone, hey, we need to waive the appraisal, that means they're waiving their right to renegotiate after the appraisal comes in. So if an appraisal comes in $20,000 less,
they need to come up with an
extra
extra $20K.
An additional $20K.
Yeah.
And so that is, but to get a deal done right now, you're going to have to on a lot.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
that's the thing. It's like, we know not all buyers can do that. And so sometimes knowing what those terms and conditions are, you don't put that out there to intimidate buyers or to tell them, hey, this is going to be impossible, but it might be resetting your expectations and where your search criteria is, because you're looking at the niche, the smallest of the small, the 6% of the inventory that has the, widest amount of buyers looking at it. So I think, again, a lot of that is, again, just kind of having that right expectation going into it, understanding what it might take to win a deal. And that's, again, it's important to understand all the layers and what goes into an offer, because a lot of times we'll win an offer, even if the price is lower, because we can do some of those more
Right.
aggressive terms and conditions and stuff as well. So,
And a key point with that too is if the people it hurts the most with this appraisal and it was crazy is first time home buyers who don't have a lot
yeah,
of cash, right? If you're someone that has 10% down or more on a home,
yeah,
we can restructure your loan to where
hmm
you're putting 5% down instead of
yep,
10, and your monthly payment's really not going to change that much.
yeah,
The only people it really hurts are those that are strapped on cash.
yeah,
And if that's the case, then that's when appraisal waivers you really have to dive into and know how
yeah,
much you're willing to spend in order to get that.
yeah.
Also, a stat though that's pretty crazy is less than 5% of appraisals came in low all of
Mm,
2024 for Fairway, who is the
okay,
number one lender in Kansas City.
okay,
And so this is very rare that
yeah,
happens. But at the same time, the only time it really does happen is right
it can
now.
be a big deal. Yeah,
Is like the spring market right now. And when it happens, it hits hard.
yeah,
We had one this past weekend for the first time in 9 months
hmm
where an appraisal came in low, where luckily they had cash, they were able to
yeah,
work it, but they got the offer because they did an appraisal waiver.
yeah, yeah,
So just one of those where you have to be ready.
yeah,
If you're stuck on I'm buying in Johnson County
hmm
or Overland Park, there's a good chance for the next 3, 4 months, you're
yeah,
gonna have to have an appraisal waiver.
yeah.
So just be ready for that.
Yeah.
So
And it's crazy. I mean, I think one thing too that's really interesting is how quickly the market shifts
right.
because again, we had great properties that again would probably be going 10% over asking right now that we're sitting on the market in the fall. So things change really quickly. And I think
Yeah.
again, part of that is understanding what the supply and the demand looks like. And
Yep.
so those are a couple stats that I want to look at. Again, these are all specific to Johnson County. That always looks a little different than what the Heartland MLS or the Kansas City metro area is doing. But right now, if we look at where we're at year over year from last year, inventory is down almost 10%, 9.9%.
And last year wasn't even
And I was going to say, and we've been in historically low inventory for
already.
years. Yeah.
Right.
So it's like we're lower than low at
Yeah.
this point.
Wow.
And supply is down. So supply is a really important number to understand. I think this is one that people use a lot, but a lot of buyers don't quite necessarily know what that means. So in a balanced market, supply refers to a situation where the number of homes available for sale or the supply is roughly equal to the number of buyers looking to purchase or the demand.
Okay.
So creating a stable environment where neither a buyer or a seller has like a significant advantage. So 6 months is balanced. We're at 1.8 months, which is really low. We were as low as I think we were at 0.4 in like the post-COVID years. So I mean, it's better than what it was, but what's kind of causing that and how do we make
Wow.
up that gap? Because that's significant. I mean, we're 4
Right.
months off from being anywhere close to a balanced market, which is why we're seeing all of these terms and conditions. And so I thought this was really interesting. It is I think it's Wichita State puts out this like market analysis every year. And they really contribute this current inventory shortage is ultimately the result of 15 years of too little new home construction.
Mm,
So what was 15
that's true.
years ago? You were a baby, right,
I
Tanner?
was.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was. I was
yeah.
a freshman in high school.
Oh, see, look at okay. I was a little older than that, but that was, when I was making some of my first home purchases post bubble bursting in 2008, and new
Okay.
construction basically came to a
Stopped.
halt. Yeah, I
Completely
mean,
stopped.
builders stopped building,
Right.
and so that's again something that we're still feeling the effect of, especially at
Huh.
modest price points. So I think this is interesting because it got really expensive to build then post
Mhm.
COVID in these last few years because materials were expensive, labor was expensive. And so again, you kind of had to have a budget of being like a custom home,
Right.
builder in order to go and do that. And so our team has been really diving into this. We've been meeting with some builders that are local, and a big thing that they're doing is really changing their model from like a custom home builder of like, hey, Tanner, what do you want? Tell me your dream kitchen colors. How do you want this to lay out to like almost a fully speculative model where it's like, hey,
Really.
we build these 5 floor plans and these 4 design packages, brown, tan, gray, and like that's it. We don't make any modifications. And that allows them to build it faster and build it at a better price point so that it meets the demand for all of these first time buyers that are struggling to get in here. So these are kind of interesting numbers too. The Kansas City permitting activity, so pulling permits
Yep.
for single family homes, that's projected to go up in 2025 about 3%. And that will be about 4,465 new home permits being pulled in the Kansas City metro area. So again, they're really trying to work to increase that. The total number of units sold in terms of total number of houses they're predicting will be sold in 2025 is 36,300, which is up hopefully about 4.4% year over year. But again, when you look at that percentage, 4,000, 4,500 of that new construction versus the total resale. I mean, that's a good percentage of that.
Yep.
So you personally built a house, what, 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Yeah, year and a half ago.
Year and a half ago? Okay,
Yep.
so tell us a little bit about like being a young buyer in Kansas City. Like, why did you go that route?
Yeah. Well, I basically moved to Colorado is what I told people. We live in Lenexa, which isn't far off. But
so you probably landed in a different spot.
Correct, because our homes before that were in Fairway.
Okay.
And
right in the heart.
Extremely desirable.
Heart of Johnson
and
County.
then Old Overland Park and 95th and Antioch, which is the heart of first-time home buyers.
Yeah.
And we're that typical couple.
Yeah.
And I have both those houses rentals now, but our decision was simply for the price. And this was we bought in what, 23, I believe. Yeah, very end of 23. And so it's been just at 2 years now. And with that, we had to make the decision of, are we going to go into all these bidding wars and do everything these people are doing? Or are we going to look outside of the strict Johnson County bubble of Overland Park?
Yeah.
Because we were looking South Overland Park, Leawood, and Old Overland Park to buy a $500,000-$600,000 house. We said, why don't we just build something that we want for the same price and go through the process and do it? And so our decision was we chose the house over the location, which a lot of people choose location over house, right? It's up to you. Everyone's different. But we chose house over location because we were like, hey, we're going to be this home 5-7 years and raise our family there for a little bit. And so we wanted to have the nice house.
Yeah.
It was a great process. But like I said, we had to choose between buying location or buying the house.
Yeah.
We chose house.
But so I think another point with that, like how much does the fact that everything's new, because that's another thing we're talking about. Not only is it like saddle up partner, we're going out to, these aggressive terms, but we're taking the house as is. So you might have a roof that's 20 years old or older mechanics and stuff like that. So is there some of that too that kind of drove you there for just peace of mind?
My wife, we bought both of her houses and renovated both of them. Gut job. Our last one was a complete gut job and renovated the entire thing. She told me we're not doing that again because we tried living there during a renovation.
Yeah. So that's stressful. Yes.
Very stressful. And so when you're buying it as is, you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
You choose over that.
Yeah.
We wanted something worth a little more stability.
Okay.
So we chose the new build route. Now, like I said, that there wasn't as many options as you think with new builds either, just because the inventory shortage.
Yeah.
There was a lot more options and a lot better chance of getting what we wanted for the price. If we moved out, we moved west.
Yeah.
And we don't regret it whatsoever.
Yeah.
So it's not for everybody. A lot of people want to do new build because they want it. That we also had a 9-month window because we owned our previous home where we could wait. It took us 11 months because it went over.
Okay.
To build
11 months build time.
But it's also like those 11 months, that was the best route for my family at the time.
Yeah.
Everyone's different. Some people have to move as soon as their lease is up.
Yeah.
You know? So it's case by case. But for us, it was, we don't regret the situation whatsoever, but we did have to choose home location.
Yeah. Well, and that's interesting too, because the 11-month build, I do a lot of new construction and have in the last couple of years. And some of these builders now are getting it down to about 4 to 6 months to build,
insane.
Which is crazy. But again, it's kind
That
of
is
this lean model. So I love doing new construction. If you have any questions about new construction or want to know my favorite builders in town, Tanner's favorite builders in town, why you went the route you did, message
you're so
us.
good at it.
Yeah.
That is one of your strengths for sure.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, you're so
Thank
good at
you.
it.
So, okay, well, it's fun to hear about your personal story.
I wanna
with
hear
that
yours.
too. But I want to talk about rates. Let's talk about rates.
No one wants to hear about rates. Who wants to hear about rates? Do you want to hear about rates? Let's talk rates.
Rates, nothing's really happened with rates, really, have they? But that's what's kind of fascinating. I think the fact that rates didn't really shift, but the market shifted what feels like a 180 from what it was in November 2024 to where we're at now. So tell us a little bit about kind of what's happening and how inflation plays into that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the way rates are, rates right now, as we're filming this, are in the mid to high sixes. They peaked in January in around 7.25,
Yeah, we got
7.3,
back to
7.5.
sevens
We were in the sevens again.
It was cute for a minute.
For a minute, it was great for a second. Yeah, so fun. They came back down shortly. But for the last 2 weeks now, 3 weeks now, we've had a stability of, hey, we've just kind of floated in this mid sixes range.
Yeah.
Which kind of proves another point that people are adjusting their buying to this percentage.
Yeah.
As long as they can afford the monthly payment.
Yeah.
But we just need stability.
Yeah.
Like we just need to know that rates aren't going to go from 5 to 7 in a matter of 6 months. Like they went from 5.99 to 7.25 in 3 months from October of last year till January of this year.
Yeah.
That can't happen. People fluctuate so much that then they just get burned out like, whoa, we push back. when we saw stability just for these 3 weeks, even met with this demand of the spring market, that's what you're seeing right now.
Yeah.
People are adjusting to these new rates.
Yeah.
Are 6 is still high? Absolutely. Are they supposed to come down? Yes. Is when? I wish I knew.
Where's your crystal ball?
If I had, I left it over there. If I had one, I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah.
You know, I could bet everything if I knew what rates were going to do. There's some things you can track to know what rates are doing. The biggest is inflation. CPI and PPI is the 2 reports that the Feds go off of for inflation. But those
Sounds boring.
It's so boring. You don't need to know all that. You don't need to track rates. But as far as inflation goes, if inflation starts coming down, which it has came down, if it continues to come down and meets the expectations of the Fed, rates will follow.
Yeah. And that target's always like about 2%, right? Of what we're trying to get to.
So when you hear 2% inflation, that means year over year, they want prices to go up at 2%.
Yeah.
Right? Last year, they hit 8%.
Yeah.
It's the highest inflation we've had in forever.
Yeah.
That means prices went up 8% year over year.
Yeah. Try feeding 4 children.
With eggs. Even though you shop at Aldi, we know eggs are like $7.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
When that gets back down to 2%. And stays there consistently, rates will follow and come down.
Yeah. Well, I think another important part about that, I was listening to a podcast last week, like inflation's not bad. Like it's just, we're trying to keep inflation in check. And that's why you want to make an investment in assets because assets will continue to appreciate with inflation.
I think we'll talk about that with home appreciation.
Yeah.
And you just see it. Look at the last 3-4 years of home appreciation. Even when inflation goes up, guess what? Your houses are skyrocketing.
Well, and that's crazy. Okay. The number that I cannot get over is that since 2020, 5 years ago, the U.S. home values have jumped over 45%, which would be more than a decade of typical growth in 5 years.
That's crazy.
Which is crazy. And that's what has kept people from making that move too, because again, those people are locked in, with low interest rates, and their home value has now doubled to go step into the market that you really feel that effect, because again, you've seen all of this appreciation here. So some of those numbers are just kind of crazy, but
it is.
But why do you not want to wait for rates to go down? I think you have a really interesting example here that I'd love for you to talk through of what happens if we do wait for rates to go down?
Absolutely. So I share this with everyone is if you're waiting for rates to go down, let's say you're waiting for them to go 0.5%, right? So you're at 6.5 now, you want it to get to 6%.
Okay.
Every 0.5% that rates go down, 3 million more home buyers are entering the market.
3 million.
Yes.
That's a staggering number.
And so you think demand's high now?
Yeah.
Let's add 3 million people into that.
Yeah.
Right. And a lot of these are those first-time home buyers or the second-time home buyers that are waiting for rates to drop that they can feel comfortable to buy that second home.
Yeah.
Right. So the people that are getting hurt are those first and second-time home buyers. And so when 3 million more people demand pops up, they're trying to build houses. They can't build fast enough.
Yeah.
Right. And you already saw there's 25 houses that came on in Johnson County this weekend in a spring market.
Yeah.
Right. There's not enough demand. So when you add supply, so when you add a bunch of demand and have less supply, then it's not going to be great, even with rates coming down. So let's say you're waiting for rates to drop 1%. That means there's 6 million people that are coming in.
It's crazy.
And if 6 million people come in, your prices are going to go up at least 10%.
Yeah.
So you're going to spend on a $400,000 home, $40,000 more to save $400 a month.
Yeah.
So you're saving $400 a month, yes, but it'll take you 10 years to gain that $40,000 that you wasted by sitting. Right?
Yeah.
And so it's always best if you can afford the monthly payment to get in a home before rates drop because you can always refinance.
Yeah. And that's the point too, is like, I always ask this when I sit down to meet a buyer and I would say, this isn't a trick question, but do you know what you can afford? Like, do you know what your purchase price is? Sometimes people do, sometimes they don't, but I'm like, the purchase price doesn't really matter. What matters is what can you afford to put down? What do you qualify for? And what can you afford to pay month over month? And let that dictate the search versus a specific number, be it purchase price or rate. Like, what is your buying power? And I think that's what's huge is like the first part of the process when we sit down and talk through a buyer. I always sit down and talk with a buyer before we go look at a house to make sure we understand this, but it's let's get you connected with a trusted lender because again, that's going to dictate how the whole search is going to go is understanding that buying power. But
absolutely.
I mean, that's
the very
huge.
First conversation we have as well.
Yeah. But 3 million more buyers for every half percentage, which is crazy. Again, when it's already feeling like there's people lined up, to get in houses, especially in a market like ours.
So we always push, if you can afford the monthly payment, don't stop your search for rates. Plus, what happens if rates don't come down for another 2 years? You're completely out of the market where if you bought it and can afford the monthly payment, you're good. Like you're in the home and it's still going to appreciate. It's crazy. And when rates do come down and you can refinance,
Yeah.
And guess what's going to happen to your home value? Because you're in before the amount of demand comes in.
Yeah.
It's going to go up.
Yeah.
So it's never a bad time to buy if you can afford the monthly payment.
Yeah. And that's this is my call to action, because I think this is another super interesting stat is, well, first of all, 38% of current home buyers are millennials, which I think I'm still hanging on.
You're
I'm an old millennial.
Yeah.
You're in a nice mid-millennial.
I'm a mid-millennial.
A mid-millennial. So
I'm very mid.
Yes, mid. But only 45% of millennials currently own a home. And what's happened in this last year is that the median age for a first-time buyer increased from 35 to 38, which is crazy. Right? I think the biggest thing and the biggest point that I always make if I'm meeting with a young buyer is like, get into a home. Like, let that equity start working for you, because the longer you wait, the more expensive it is and the harder it is to enter it in. Because I mean, that's a pretty incredible number. The other thing that's happened there too is because home values have gone up so much. And I think what's important to talk about is kind of the amount of equity we have in houses, but is this repeat buyer age. So that boomer, that's usually downsizing. A lot of times they own their house outright. They got a lot of equity in there. That's increased from 58 to 61. So people are also staying in those houses longer, which again is kind of jamming up some of that inventory for what would be a first time or move up buyer.
We see that a lot right now. We call it the golden handcuff, which is simply the interest rates being so low.
Yeah.
A lot of people refinance to a rate that's in the twos.
Yeah.
Literally the twos or the low threes when they refinance. And they're like, okay, my monthly payment right now is $2,000 for a $600,000 house.
Yeah.
I'd have to buy a $450,000 house in order to have the same monthly payment.
Yeah.
With rates in the sixes.
Yeah.
So they're stuck because they have a low interest rate. They have a lot of equity, yes, but they're like, what do I do with this equity?
Yeah.
I can put it down towards the house, but my payment's not changing.
Yeah.
So that's why they're stuck. They have a low interest rate and they have a house with a lot of value, but they don't want to go spend $900,000 and double their mortgage payment, even with all the equity.
Yeah.
So it's called the golden handcuff of they're stuck.
Mm-hmm.
And until rates, now that is one thing, if rates drop, that could open up because people can stomach going from 3% to 5%. They can stomach that.
Yeah.
They can't stomach going from 3 to 7.
Yeah. That feels.
So if that happens, if it gets down all the way to 5, you'll see an influx of inventory, but the demand will be insane as well. So we'll kind of wash it out.
Yeah.
But people can at least then, those boomers that are holding on can at least maybe look to their next home.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So interesting. So to that point too, of kind of like, again, people still always ask, which again, are we in a housing bubble? Everyone still thinks that the wheels are going to fall off at some point. So how do you answer that question?
Yeah, that's a very great question. I get it all the time. I had someone, when I started in 2019, like I said, I barely knew what a mortgage was, right? I was teaching, I tried to teach my first class on mortgages. I had someone ask me in 2019, are we in a housing bubble? Because I think we are.
Mm-hmm.
They were looking at the time, it was a $250,000 house in the middle of Overland Park that was a 4-bed, 2-bath, and they didn't want to buy it because they thought the rates were like, they thought we were in a bubble, right? Exactly. I guarantee you 5 years later that they wish they would have bought a house.
Yes, woulda, coulda, shoulda.
And they're not in a housing bubble, right? They're still waiting for that bubble to pop.
Yeah.
We're not in a housing bubble.
Yeah.
And in order to be in a housing bubble, you have to have a bunch of supply and low demand. And that's what happened in 2008, right? Which is exactly what you said. Our supply is at 1.6 months.
Mm-hmm.
You need to be at 6 months for an average market.
Yeah.
On top of that, let's say something drastic happens and that supply does get close to 6 months, which it'd have to be a crash in the economy for that to happen.
Okay.
That happens, 1, rates will come down and people can afford more. But 2, the second piece of it, there's so much equity in our country right now that people that are in these homes can turn around and sell their house instead of going into a foreclosure at a price that the prices aren't going to go down because they have so much equity. They're not going to go out. And a big piece of that, what I mean by this is if you look at the total United States, every single home, only 28% of those homes have, or 28% of all that equity or the value of the homes is a mortgage. And so what I mean by that is, let's say
it's an incredible number. So only 28%.
Yep.
So homeowners in the country have only 28% of their home finance. So on average, close to 3/4 of that is equity.
Straight equity.
Which is incredible.
And so, yes, and almost over 50% of people in the United States have their homes completely paid off.
50% of them completely paid off.
Completely paid off.
Okay.
And so the people that do have mortgages have a bunch of equity. And
incredible.
And over 50% of people don't even have a mortgage.
Yeah.
And so in order to get backwards where there's a bubble and house crash has to be like 2008 where everyone was just getting loans because they were approved for everything and that there was a lot of supply and no demand. This is the complete opposite. We'd have to have a huge shift in the market to be anywhere else close to a bubble.
Yeah.
So long story short, We're not in a bubble.
Yeah.
There's too much equity.
Okay.
And there's too much demand for us to be in a bubble. That, I mean, it will be years before a bubble could even be possible.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it's so unbalanced. So fascinating.
So, yeah. Let me ask you this though. As I'm going through all this demand and supply, and I'm looking at how crazy this market is after our weekend, what are benefits of like hiring you as an agent?
Yeah.
Like,
it's a great
why
question.
do we need that?
I loved it. Yeah. Let me talk about myself.
You talked about me so much in all these, but like,
no, but I think
why is it important?
Yeah, no, it's
because it is so important.
It's very important. And I think I was just actually watching something another agent had put out that I thought was really interesting. And she was saying, most people pick their agents out of obligation. Aunt Sally is a realtor. She's always had her license. She sells, less than one house. Aunt Sally is out there crushing it, selling less than one house per year. I mean, on average, the average realtor sells less than 2 houses per year. That's crazy. I mean, what I always liken it to is like, if you're going to go have a brain surgery, do you want the surgeon that performs 1 to 2 surgeries per year? Or do you want the person that's in it all day, every day? And I think the thing that's important now more than ever, I mean, it's always important to have a trusted advisor, to have somebody that is in the market, that is operating with these conditions, that's building relationships with other professionals in the industry to help you be successful, to navigate and to set the right type of expectations. For instance, the deal, I was going to say, we had a deal together. Tanner's the lender. My buyers are awesome. We both know the listing agent. They both know that we're going to get stuff done. Yep. They know that our team produces. They know that you're going to get everything through underwriting, ready to go. It's going to be a smooth, clean sailing deal. So that helps us win the deal because of the relationships.
Because of that.
And multiple offers. And there was an offer that was higher than ours, but they felt confident in our ability to execute and to get our buyers to be where they need to be. So I think that's huge. Yep. I mean, again, that's a huge part of it is not just my role as the realtor. I always say I'm the trusted advisor, but I'm also the connector. And a huge part of what I'm going to connect my buyers with are other great people within the industry. And so that's why we have these types of partnerships. And I always tell my people, like, you're not going to get any Joe Blow off the street. These are all going to be people that are tried and true. For every conversation they're going to have with you as a lender, we have 3 behind the scenes. And like that makes that really seamless. And it takes a lot of work off of that from a buyer perspective. The process, things are going to get done, but it's huge. I mean, it's
huge. And it's so important. Just this, like you said, this weekend, the spring market, if you weren't in the market every day, you saw 2 houses a year.
Yeah.
You don't know that spring is sprung.
Exactly.
You don't understand that this market's completely changed from where it was 3 weeks ago. You have people that are still on social media saying, hey, buy now because the market's going to go crazy.
Yeah.
Guess what? It's crazy.
Yeah. It's here.
It's here. Mm-hmm. And so if you don't have someone that's in it every single day and you're in multiple offers, they're not going to know the listing agent. They're not going to have an ability to call the lender on a Sunday to get something done. They're not going to have the ability to do anything.
Yeah. Sorry. Was that a dig on me calling you yesterday?
You did call me yesterday.
9 a.m.
But we did get the house.
We got it. It was worth it. Yeah.
It was worth it. For you, it was worth it. So, no, it was good.
Yeah.
But that's what you get.
Yeah.
When someone's a professional, you get the professional.
Yeah.
And when you have someone that's doing it part-time, you're going to get part-time service and you're not going to get the house. You can't win with a part-time agent right now.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think that's
important.
kind of, again, like, same thing with the lender. Like you had a stat that I thought was fascinating on how many lenders we had, just 4 years ago and how many people have got out of the business.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, 2021 was in the heat of the market when it was crazy. Rates were at 2s to 3 interest rates.
Okay.
And at that time, there was over 600,000 independent mortgage bankers.
Okay.
When I say independent mortgage bankers, that means that they're ran by a mortgage company like Fairway Independent Mortgage Corporation, right? Not straight banks, but all they do is mortgages. That number went from around 700,000 down to 93,000 this past year in 2024. All these people did not renew their license over the last 34 years. It got a lot harder.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so we're seeing over 75% of people, that means, got out of the industry, which is absolutely insane.
That is. That's an incredible statistic.
It just proves once again how important it is to have someone that's in it, 1, for the long haul, 2, in it for your best interest.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of people, there's a lot of lenders out there that are hungry for a deal. Same with realtors. They're doing 1 or 2 deals. They need to feed their family. Do they have your best interest as a fiduciary?
Yeah.
That's a good point.
That's a really good point.
And you don't know.
Yeah.
And when you have someone, you have to have a professional that's in it daily in order to get it, because those stats are staggering.
Yeah. And there's a service element too. There was a story I had. I met with a buyer a couple months ago. He's an older gentleman. And before he had met with me to talk about buying a house, he had said, I needed to see if I could get a mortgage. So I walked into my local bank and I sat in the lobby for a while and they couldn't find anyone to talk to me. And then it turned out they didn't have anybody that actually did lending there. And he was shocked by that because the last time he bought a house 50 years ago, it was like, that's how things worked. And so I do think, that's part of it too, where it's like, this is a huge investment for most people. It's going to be the biggest investment they make in their lifetime. You want somebody that you can pick up, that you can call, you can text, that's on the other line that, again, has your best interest in mind, but is also walking you through the process. Because for a lot of people, they've never done this, or they've done it, 10 years ago. They don't really remember the nuance of how that looks. So I think that's kind of a good kind of place to like roll that back into and kind of summarizes just really like who you work with matters. We're in it. We love meeting people. We're high eyes. We could probably sit here and talk for, I don't know, all day. We would need someone to cut us off.
We have a very interesting podcast.
Yeah.
Then let's just keep rolling. We'll go all day.
Yes, we go all the topics, parenting, all the things, fashion.
You don't want to ask me on fashion.
Yeah, fashion.
Big fashion guy.
Yes, teeth. Tanner loves to brush his teeth. It's pearly whites. He admitted he stopped at a gas station to brush them before he got here. Sometimes you got to just air the dirty laundry of the people that you trust the most.
Listen, it's St. Patrick's Day, and I thought you wear green stuff.
No, I don't. We're white or black at spring, so we're mixing it up with the tan.
Oh, wow.
But it's been awesome to have you.
So fun.
You're great. The one thing that I want to just kind of put out to all my buyers, if you're looking to buy a home, Tanner is a great resource. Message me. I'd love to get you guys connected. And like I said, who you work with matters. I'm always taking on new buyers. I'm never too busy for new referrals. I would love to meet you, work with you, sit down and educate you on the market. It's ever changing. What's happening today might look completely different than what's happening a month from now. But love to grab a coffee, grab a drink, sit down and educate you on that. And again, get you connected with great partners like Tanner. So thank you for being here today.
So fun.
Wealth of knowledge. Yes. Reach out if people have questions. And let's go get the spring market. It's fast and furious.
Spring is sprung.
Spring is sprung.
Come on.